أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباءهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي للأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمهره ننخس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشیطان اللعین الرجیم بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجہم. ایک مرثیہ امام موسیٰ کاظم علیہ السلام کے بارے میں، اور پھر ختم کریں گے ایک دعا سے، جہاں ہم خدا سے دعا مانگیں گے امام موسیٰ کاظم کا وسیلہ لے کے انشاءاللہ. مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے. بغداد کے قیدی پر، بغداد کے قیدی پر زندان بھی روتا ہے. مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے. اس درد نے تربت میں سجاد کو تڑپایا، زندہ سے نکل کر بھی آزاد نہ ہو پایا. ہے پہلا جنازہ جو، ہے پہلا جنازہ جو زنجیروں میں جھکڑا ہے. مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے. ہائے زنجیروں کو تکتی ہے شانوں کو ہلاتی ہے، میت کو کبھی اپنی گودی میں اٹھاتی ہے، ایک ہاتھ ہے پہلو پر، ایک ہاتھ ہے پہلو پر، لگتا ہے یہ زہرا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، ذرے بھی لہو رو کر روداد سناتے ہیں، قدموں کے نشان اس کے زندہ میں بتاتے ہیں، یہ نظر کے عالم میں کس طرح سے تڑپا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، جو لوگ گزرتے ہیں آپس میں یہ کہتے ہیں، گھر والے تو یثرب میں اس قیدی کے رہتے ہیں، پھر اس کے جنازے پر یہ کون ضعیفہ ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، کہتی ہے کوئی بی بی ہے وقت مصیبت کا، اب جلد مدینے سے آ جا اے رضا آ جا، بے گور و کفن کب سے، بے گور و کفن کب سے، بیٹا تیرا بابا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، شبیر کی غربت کا نوحہ یہ سناتے ہیں، سوکھے ہوئے لب اس کے امت کو بتاتے ہیں، اس نے بھی دم آخر، اس نے بھی دم آخر پانی نہیں پایا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، غربت ہے تکلم یہ شبیر کی غربت سی، ایک بیٹی ہے یثرب میں صغرا کی طرح اس کی، اس واسطے میت کا رخ سوئے مدینہ ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجهم۔ انشاءاللہ ہم سب ہاتھ اٹھا کے دعا کریں گے، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، اللہ نے بخشا ہے تمہیں رتبہ عالی، اللہ نے بخشا ہے تمہیں رتبہ عالی، جاتا ہی نہیں آپ کے در سے کوئی خالی، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، مقروض جو مومن ہے ادا قرض ہو ان کا، مقروض جو مومن ہے ادا قرض ہو ان کا، جو بیٹیاں گھر میں ہے ادا فرض ہو ان کا، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، زینب کا تصدق علی اصغر کا تصدق، زینب کا تصدق علی اصغر کا تصدق، شبیر کا عباس کا اکبر کا تصدق، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، معصوموں کا صدقہ تجھے زہرا کی قسم ہے، معصوموں کا صدقہ تجھے زہرا کی قسم ہے، ہو جائے ابھی دور کہ جو رنج و الم ہے، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، اور آخری شعر ہے، ہاتھ اٹھا کے ہم پڑھیں گے انشاءاللہ، جو حاجت صادق ہو تو پورا انہیں کر دے، جو حاجت صادق ہو تو پورا انہیں کر دے، تو پورا انہیں کر دے، ہر ایک کا دامن در مقصود سے بھر دے، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، امداد میری کیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، بگڑی کو بنا دیجئے یا موسی کاظم، اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد، سورۃ المبارکۃ الفاتحہ۔
اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، الحمد للہ رب العالمین، الصلاة والسلام علی اشرف الانبیاء والمرسلین، خاتم النبیین ابی القاسم محمد واہل بیتہ الطیبین الطاہرین المعصومین الذین اذہب اللہ عنہم الرجس وطہرہم تطہیرا، اما بعد فقد قال اللہ تبارک وتعالی وقولہ الحق وهو اصدق القائلین، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I would like to extend my condolences to the entire Muslim Ummah, especially the followers of Madhab al-Tashayyu, the Maraja of our time, and especially Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, on this sad occasion upon which we commemorate the death anniversary and the shahadat of our seventh Imam, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. Usually this ayat is recited just to have a correlation between one of the titles of Imam that are mentioned in Quran. This ayat which I chose for tonight's discussion as well is from Surah Al-Imran, ayat number 134, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed by saying that those who spend in ease and adversity. Of course, you will have different types of situations that arise for you. Whether you live up to those situations or not, it's up to you. But don't complain that I don't have anything, so how can I help or how can I give? No, this ayat is very clear. Those who spend, whether in ease or in adversity, doesn't really matter. If you have little, you still give little. If you have a lot, you give a lot. And then those who suppress their anger, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. And one of the outstanding attributes of seventh Imam is al-Kadhim. It says those who suppress their anger and excuse the faults of the people. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah loves those who are the virtuous ones. We see that Quran is basically a qasida of Ahlul Bayt. As this ayat is speaking about the attribute of our seventh Imam, you'll find similar ayat that talk about the other accolades of Ahlul Bayt. So therefore, it's easy to say the Quran is a qasida for Ahlul Bayt, and he talks about them. Even if the names of Imams aren't mentioned, but the indirect reference to them is obvious in many verses. Name is not important. We know that for sure. That if the name has appeared in Quran or not, that's not important. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Quran many of the Anbiya, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the same time mentioned in Quran and did not mention in Quran many of the other Anbiya. Only 25 or 26 names of Anbiya are in Quran. We find up to 45 names of Anbiya in the books of Ahadith. Well, we've grown up knowing that there were about 124,000 Anbiya that were sent. So only 25 are being mentioned in Quran. Put into ratio, you'll see the number. So therefore, we see that having your name in Quran or not having your name in Quran is not an important matter. In fact, Allah mentions the names of those people who are the most despicable of all times. Tabbat yada Abi Lahab. The name of Abu Lahab is in Quran. So with that said, name is not important to be mentioned in Quran. We have Musa Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, and we have Musa Imam Musa Kadhim. Harun, in the story of Hazrat Musa, is the helper of Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. Right? Hazrat Musa, when he was going, and he was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to Pharaoh, and because he has rebelled, go speak to him. قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Speak to him softly. Hazrat Musa demanded what? Oh Allah, send me, give me a vizier, my brother Harun, min ahli, and وَجَعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِنْ أَهْلِي هَارُونَ أَخِي, and because of his tongue, that he's more eloquent than me. So over there in the story of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, there's Harun, who's the helper of Hazrat Musa. But in the story of Hazrat Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salam, we have a Harun who's the murderer of Imam Kadhim. So don't be fooled by the names. So Imam alayhi was born on the 7th day of Safar by some accounts in the year 128 after Hijrah. And his Shahada takes place on this day of 25th of Rajab in the year 183. When Musa ibn Mahdi intended to kill Imam with the orders of Hakim of the time, it got his family worried. Imam said, the first letter that comes from Iraq will be the death sentence for this man. He saw Rasulullah in his dream, who gave him this news and asked him to thank Allah. At this point, Imam alayhi made this dua which is associated with Imam, and that dua is known as Joshan Saghir. This dua is narrated on the authority of Imam Musa al-Kadhim, and is a remarkably effective supplication, having all the merits of Joshan Kabir. Sayyid ibn Tawus, in his book Muhajjud Da'wat, has narrated that Imam used to recite this dua when he knew that the Abbasid Caliph was planning to kill him. So Imam alayhi was taught by Rasulullah in his dream, and then Imam made this dua. The word Joshan means chest. That's why it is recommended to chest, meaning your chest right here. That's why it is recommended to make a hirz, an amulet of this dua, and keep it with you for safety and security purposes. Dua Joshan al-Saghir is for repelling enemies and attaining the maqam of shukr in calamities and struggles. It increases sabr and gives you the spirit of liveliness. And so therefore a lot of benefits are associated with this dua. Moreover, if a person is struck with something, or he's stuck in difficulties, he recites this dua, he will come out of those difficulties. Paying attention to the words and their meaning would bring some sense of comfort. When you look at the words that Imam ﷺ is using in these dua, because we understand dua, you and I can make it in our own languages. But it is recommended to make the dua in Arabic while you understand what you're saying. Why? Because the words in Arabic are the ones that are uttered by Imam Masum. And Imam Masum knows how to speak in the bargah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it'll bring this sense of comfort to you, because it will remind you of the favors of Allah, and that you have, and no one else has, for example, those favors that Allah has bestowed upon you. The time of Imam Musa Kadhim, before I get to some of the segments of this dua which I want to share with you, and hopefully we can pay more heed to this dua and make it a common recital amongst us. That the time of Imam Musa Kadhim was one of the most difficult times. While he had the time in his hand to go ahead and do the tabligh, but if you realize the geopolitical situation, let's go over the situation in a brief, and inshallah I'll talk about some of the segments of this dua. That Imam ﷺ, first of all, the challenge that he faced from the end of his own brothers. So Imam has a brother by the name Abdullah Aftah. Sheikh Mufid in his Irshad mentions that he works against the teachings of his father, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq. And after the death of his father, Abdullah had some following when he proclaimed Imamat. But he was later defeated by Imam Musa Kadhim's wisdom. He initiated the movement of Fatahiyya. So that's one challenge that Imam has to face. He has another brother by the name Ishaq ibn Jafar, who was a pious man, very knowledgeable person, recognized the status of Imam Musa Kadhim, and of course agreed to his imamat. Imam has another brother by the name Muhammad ibn Ja'far. He was a generous and brave man who died in the time of Ma'mun. But Shia knew the status of Imam Kadhim and didn't go after Muhammad. So that was another story. A lot of time, the followers of Madhab Tashayyu or the previous Imams, when they wouldn't find a clear distinction, they would follow whomever they thought would be more generous, more brave, or was more of a public figure. And then you have Ismail. One of the most important events in the time of Imam Musa Kadhim is the death of his older brother Ismail during the lifetime of his father Imam Ja'far Sadiq. And of course, we know why Ismail is so important, because Ismail, from him, began the firqa of Ismailiyah. It is considered to be among the hidden wisdoms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Ismail, who was himself a very pious man, no doubt about it, died while his father was still alive. Because in order for the next Imam to take the reins of Imamat, the previous Imam has to die. So as long as sixth Imam is alive, none of his sons can declare their Imamat. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with his wisdom, made sure that Ismail passed away because he would have a great following. Even with that, many consider Ismail to be next Imam, and disputed his death, and later followed his son Muhammad ibn Ismail as Imam of the time. So then they deviated from the Ithna Ashariya and they became six Imami. Similarly, while Imam was facing this internal difficulty, Imam Musa Kadhim, there were four tyrant rulers of his time. Mansur Dawaniqi, he inherits, Mansur Dawaniqi also persecuted sixth Imam, Mahdi Abbasi, Hadi Abbasi, and Harun al-Rashid. There's a very strange event that took place in the time of Imam Musa Kadhim, which was known as Waqe Fakh. If you study the description of this event, which took place close to Makkah in the year 169, and a lot of the followers of Imam were martyred in it. In fact, from the kalam of our ninth Imam, Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, for us, after Karbala, no tragedy or musibat was as great as Fakh. That event really shook us. But we see that Imam Musa Kadhim, despite all of these hurdles, despite all of these tough situations, made sure that he set out to do what he was supposed to do. So his work was outstanding from that aspect. Tabligh of Deen, that's his first and foremost duty. Spread of Islamic culture, explanation of the ahkam, and the rebuttals. Imam ﷺ continued to do so, even though he spent close to 14 years in the prison. No other Imam spent that much time in the prisons. Number two, fighting against the tyrant rulers. I just mentioned the names of Harun al-Rashid and Mansur al-Dawaniqi. Breaking their stronghold, standing up against them, and keeping taqiyya intact. Whenever taqiyya was needed, dissimulation, Imam told his followers to practice that. When it was not needed, Imam told him to stand up. And lastly, preparing and nurturing those close friends to influence the social or the socio-political society and the governmental bodies that are around them, in order to destabilize the usurpers of the Khilafat and protect the innocent by providing for them. One name comes to mind. I'm sure you've heard of him by the name Ali ibn Yaqtin. Imam said to him something. Ali ibn Yaqtin was installed in the government of Harun for that purpose. so that Imam والسلام, while he's being under surveillance by Harun, Imam can also keep an eye on him. Not that Imam really needs to keep an eye on him, but for this particular reason, to go ahead and make sure that the tyranny that is being inflicted towards his followers, to the extent that they're being persecuted and they have to live a life in dissimulation, Imam made sure that he placed his own in such a high-ranking position who can provide for the innocent people around. And that's why this, kalam of Imam Musa Kadhim for Ali ibn Yaqin is an eye-opening kalam. Imam said, Ya Ali, and speaking to Ali ibn Yaqin, Kaffaratu a'malikum al-ihsanu ila ikhwanikum. The kafara, or the compensation for your actions, is the ihsan and the kindness that you show towards your brethren. Why kafara? Because you're working for our enemy, and you're not allowed to work for our enemy. But because we have installed you in that position and asked you to do so, there's a kafara that has to be given. And what is the kafara? Kafara is to fulfill that act which remain incomplete. And without giving the kafara, your action will remain incomplete. So you, na'udhu broke the fast during the month of Ramadan, you have to give kafara. So Imam said, Ya li kafaratu a'malikum al-ihsanu ila ikhwanikum. The kafara for your actions, what you do serving a tyrant ruler, is the ihsan ila ikhwanikum, is the kindness that you show towards your brethren. Then Imam said something. He said, Idman li wahidatan wa admana laka thalathan. You give damanat, guarantee one thing to me, and I will guarantee three things for you. Look at the generosity of Imam, that he's willing to give three over one things. He said, Idman li an la talqa ahadan min awliyaina illa qadayta hajatahu wa akramtahu. Guarantee this one thing for me, that whenever you come across one of our brothers or friends, awliya'ana, those who are our followers, those who are our friends, you will make sure that you do qadai hajat. That means you fulfill their need. Wa akramtahu, and make sure that you honor them. That's one thing. Wa admana laka an la yudhillaka saqfu sijnin abadan. So that's one thing that I'm demanding from you, that you take care of your fellow brothers because they're being persecuted. Now you're in this position. You can take care of them. You can provide for them. You can do their takreem and provide monetarily. Do all of that. Do that one thing for me, and I will guarantee three things for you. What are those three things? Allah yudhillaka saqfu sijnin abadan. Subhanallah. The one who has spent 14 years in a prison himself is guaranteeing Ali ibn Yaqin that you will never be under the shadow of the ceiling of the roof of a prison. Never. That means you'll never enter a prison. وَلَا يَنَالَكَ حَدُّ سَيْفٍ أَبَدًا. And no sword will ever reach your neck. وَلَا يَدْخُلَ الْفَقْرُ بَيْتَكَ أَبَدًا. And you will never face poverty. Poverty will never reach your doorstep. And then Imam said, Ya Ali, man sarra mu'minan fabillahi bada'a wa bin nabiyyi thanna wa bina thalatha. That, O Ali, whoever makes a mu'min happy, he reaches Allah first, then Prophet second, and eventually he reaches us. So first, the ahkam and the hukum is directly to Ali ibn Yaqin, but does not stop us from doing the same thing, right? to fulfill the hajat of mu'mineen and to respect them. And then last part of it, Imam says, whoever makes another mu'min happy, this is how we deal with them. So the words of wisdom of Imam والسلام, in this reference, especially when it comes to speaking to Ali ibn Yaqtin, are just extraordinary. Imam والسلام, laid a plan for him that we are using you for this particular reason. And that's why on many occasions we find that Imam ordered Ali ibn Yaqtin to practice taqiyya. Imam told him, called him once, and he said, for the next few days or maybe a week or so, do wudu like the way the government and the Sunni hukumat, they do wudu. Ali ibn Yaqtin went ahead and started doing wudu in their way, and he started praying the salat in that way. Why? Because some people within inside the government of Harun had gone ahead and told Harun that Ali ibn Yaqtin is working for Imam Musa Kadhim, and he's Shia. You can look at the way he does his wudu. And then when Imam told him and he started performing wudu in their way, Harun was satisfied. He said, how do you just go ahead and claim that while he's clearly one of us? And then his duty to go ahead and help out the needy. Whenever he would receive some gifts from Harun, he would go ahead and give it to Imam. Similarly, one day Harun had given him this libas. He right away brought it to Imam so that Imam could use it and spend it for the welfare. Imam returned the libas and said, no, keep this libas with you, keep this garment and this clothing with you for a couple of maybe weeks, until we ask you to give it us to him. Imam, you always ask me to bring. He said, no, just keep it with you. He takes it back. And then one day Harun Rashid pays a visit to him and asks him about that libas that he had bestowed upon him. He said, yeah, it's sitting right here. Again, to prove those who were causing doubts or those who were trying to expose Ali ibn Yaqtin, how Imam ﷺ helped him during his reign when he was serving under Harun. So we find that this is how Imam of the time took care of Ali ibn Yaqtin and then demanded him to take care of one thing, and I will provide for three things. I want to bring you back to the dua that I had promised that we will speak a little bit about, is dua of Imam Musa Kadhim, known as dua Joshan as-Saghir. You have dua Joshan al-Kabir, which you recite during the month of Ramadan. And I don't know if there's much attention paid toward this dua, dua Joshan as-Saghir. In this dua, Imam repeats the sentence several times. Kam min abdin amsa wa asbaha. And then ends that sentence, this thought, each time with thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the bounties. وَجَعَلْنِي لِنِعَمَائِكَ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ وَلِعَلَائِكَ مِنَ الطَّاكِرِينَ. And make us amongst those who are able to thank you and those who remember you in front of your favors and bestowals. So let's look at some of the words of this dua and do a tashri and the commentary of it. Imam begins this dua. Now imagine Imam, whenever he recited this dua, when he was in imminent danger. So when the Khalifa was trying to kill Imam and plotting to kill Imam, Imam recited this dua. He said, Ilahi, kam min aduwin intada alayya sayfa adawatih. My God, many an enemy drew up the sword of hostility against me. So Imam was constantly facing this threat from the enemy. Ilahi, wa kam min baghin baghani bimakayidihi wa nasabali ashraka masayidih. My God, many a disobedient tyrant has tried treacherously to oppress me, and they have laid traps to catch me. Ilahi, wa kam min hasidin shariqa bihasadihi wa shajaya bighayzihi. My God, many an envier, sick in his throat with grudges and choked up with the anger, has cast a slur on me in an attempt to hurt me with his loose talk and to brand me unfairly with his own defects. So people would come and mistreat Imam, use slurs toward Imam, and by that try to get under the skin of Imam, that Imams would react, and this loose talk that they would use to brand Imam unfairly with the defects that these people had themselves and associate those defects with Imam. But always find Imam to be what? Responsive in a way which was, they couldn't even imagine. Imam always responded with a smile on their face, without showing any agitation at all. Imam said, Ilahi wa kam min sahaib makruhin qad jallaytaha. My God, many a dark cloud bearing sorrow and misery has been dispersed by you. So of course, while Imam mentions the musibah that has come upon him, but then at the same time, Imam also mentions how you have always looked after me. Ilahi, wa kam min dhannin hasanin haqqaqta. My God, many a hopeful expectations I cherished, which you realized. So a lot of things that I think of, a lot of times you and I have these aspirations. We want certain things to happen to us. We have hopeful expectations. But rarely you see that those things come true. And sometimes they do come true. So Imam said, even when I think of something, you go ahead and fulfill it and you make it into an actualization and realization. That is indeed another one of your favors. Allahumma fahadha maqamu abdin dhalilin. My God, here stands your humble servant. This is the maqam and the place of your humble servant. I'tarafa laka bit tawheed, who testifies your tawheed, that you're one. Wa aqarra ala nafsihi bit taqsir fi adai haqqik. Look at the humility that Imam is showing. You and I, if we start praying namaz al-shab, we start bragging and boasting. I'm speaking about myself. We start doing some charity work. We think that we are on top of the world. And comes what? We come out of humility and humbleness. In fact, these things should be making us humble. It is the opposite of humbleness that we see arrogance that come into us. Imam says, with all the favors that you have done and bestowed me with, I still testify of your tawheed, and I admit falling short of discharging his duty towards you. That the aqarra wa aqarra ala nafsihi bit taqsir fi adai haqqi. Things that are upon me, that are obligations upon me, I admit that I have fallen short of them, discharging my duty towards you. And the one who gives evidence of your countless blessings and excellent kindness and abundant good. So while we think that our actions are complete, Imam is doubting whether his action is complete or not. He said, Ilahi wa kam min abdin amsa wa asbaha fi karbil mawti wa hashrajati sadr. My God, many a living being suffers the constant agony of death, day in and day out. And here's the rattling sound passing through his gasping throat. So Imam talks about the agony of death. Death is a difficult time. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every soul will taste the agony of death. Imam is realizing the fact that every day there are people who are dying. They're suffering this constant agony of death, day in and day out. And then while I'm still alive, this is your rahmat upon me, that I'm still standing without any difficulty. There are people who are sick, suffering from different diseases, while I, alhamdulillah, have been safe from all of those diseases. Imam emphasizes on it in the next segment. He says, Ilahi, وَكَمْ مِنْ عَبْدٍ أَمْسَى وَأَصْبَحَ سَقِيمًا مُوجَعًا فِي أَنَّةٍ وَعَوِيلٍ يَتَقَلَّبُ فِي غَمِّهِ لَا يَجِدُ مَحِيصًا. My God, many a living being is ailing day in and day out. They begin their day sick. They end their day sick. Amsa wa asbah. Asbah wa amsa. Asbah means to come to morning. Amsa is come to evening. Suffering pain on the threshold of death. Restless and crying in anguish, finding no relief. وأنا في صحة من البدن وسلامة من العيش وكل ذلك منك فلك الحمد. While this is happening to a lot of people, they're ailing, they're suffering, and they're on the threshold of death, and they're crying in anguish. But I am safe and sound, living a peaceful and easy life on account of your kind attention and care to me. So while Imam mentions the difficulties of the world, and he says, while you have kept me under your care and attention. Ilahi kam min abdin amsa wa asbaha khaifan mar'uban. My God, many a living being is constantly in fear. If it's not through their health, other fears that are surrounding them. Terrified, sleepless, forsaken, alone, timid, exiled, petrified, caught in distress, running away in frustration. I'm sure you look in your community, and we look in our community, and you'll find one person that fits each one of these criteria. You'll find people who are fearful. Fearful of what? Not having the next meal, not having a job, or losing their job, or losing a loved one, living a fearful life, maybe from the aspect of legality in the country. They're terrified. They can't sleep at night. Sometimes they seem that people have left them, forsaken them. We are not looking after these people. Those who are in need, they're just suffering. They're around us. They're in our communities, yet we have forsaken them. Some people feel alone. Some of our kids, our youngsters, growing up in this society, looking and trying to balance out what Deen is telling them and what the society's norm is. How do they put a parallel between the two? How do they leave what the negativity is associated with the society and what Islam forbids them to do? In that all, they, because of the peer pressure and other pressures, they feel alone. And when they feel alone, they end up committing crimes such as taking their own lives. So there are many people who are caught in distress. They're running away in frustration. And in the wide world, there's no place to rest for a while. Neither can devise or find a way out or escape. But Imam says, oh Allah, I am safe. I'm secure. I'm satisfied. And I'm comfortable. Now don't think that Imam was living a very luxurious life. So Imam is saying all of this stuff. Remember, Imam spent 14 years in a prison. But this is the level of humility when Imam is comparing himself to those who are facing imminent threat or they're on the threshold of death, for example. I'll skip some of these segments for the brevity of time. Imam says, Ilahi wa kam min abdin amsa wa asbaha fi zulumat al-bihar. My God, many a living being day in and day out drifts over the perilous seas in the midst of terrifying hurricanes and surging waves, sure of death by drowning, yet is unable to attain safety. My God, many a living being journeys in foreign lands, far away from the kin and their family members, wandering in frustration. Maybe Imam is referring to all of us over here. Ilahi wa kam min abdin amsa wa absbaha musafiran shakhisan an ahlihi wa waladihi. How many of our parents have left, us, or the children, they have left their children behind. They've come to this land of opportunity maybe, and working in foreign lands, away from their family and their children, and the difficulty of living here without the family around you. It says, Imam says then, my God and my Master, many a living being is poor, needy, exposed, and unemployed. They're in need of help. They're in need of support. Look at the words that 14 centuries ago, of course, Imam's Wiladat is 128, so it's minus from 1400, 13 centuries ago. Imam is speaking about those things which are, so relevant today to us. My God, my Lord, oh my Master, many a living being is constantly disabled, sick, ailing, bedridden by chronic disease, writhing with pain under the bed sheets. Today, especially in this one past year, we've gone through this coronavirus. How many people we've lost because of that? They became sick, disabled, bedridden, and they never came back from it. Imam highlights that aspect as well. So you see that how all-encompassing this dua is. I'm not done with it. I'll share 3 more sentences with you before I bring to conclusion. My God, my Lord, my Master, many a living being lies on the deathbed, is kept a prisoner in narrow, gloomy corners. And lastly, Imam says, many a living being is permanently bound to the unalterable destiny of death, which surrounds him on all sides. After mentioning all of these different scenarios of difficulty humans can face, and people in his surrounding were facing, while by no means Imam was living, as I mentioned before, a very luxurious life, so that he's thanking Allah for having what others don't. Imam at the end makes sure that he proved that point to us as well. He says, Salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad waj'alni li'an'umika min ash-shakirin wa li'alaika min at-takirin. Bless Muhammad and his family, and let me be among those who thank you for your bounties and remember you and your favors. Before I bring you to the close, coronavirus has us all scared. Of course, it was when it began and it started spreading and we started seeing the numbers rise. It was a scary time. I'm sure many of you feel much better now, today, on this day of March, as you did last year. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. This coronavirus, it's not the end of the world. So what happened that you were to stay home and you couldn't get out of your house? You couldn't travel freely. You couldn't go to the restaurants that you like to eat in. You couldn't go to the masajid and the Imam Barga for almost a year. Well, things are slowly getting better. Many, but people have complained, if not all, in one way or another. So for 1 year, we went through this sort of prison-like situation where we're bound and stuck in our houses. There were lockdowns on occasions. Couldn't leave the house unnecessarily. Going to hospitals is actually, further deterioration of your life and your health because of what's happening in the hospitals. And hats off to those who are in the front line. But we all in this 1 year have felt that we've been cornered, and we felt the fear and the distress. And some of us, alhamdulillah, who had the luxury of not losing anything, were able to work from home. Still, we complained that we couldn't travel, for example. I wanted to go to Ziyarat, I couldn't go to Ziyarat. I wanted to go to Hajj was canceled, for example. And we couldn't attend our masajid and Imam Barga. even if the intentions for things which are true and virtuous in nature, we still complained. Imam ﷺ spent 14 years in prison, brothers and sisters. 14 years in different prisons. But not only Imam didn't complain while we are partially stuck at home, Imam was full-time stuck in these prisons. What did Imam say? Imam said, Allahumma inni kuntu ma as'aluka an tafrighani li ibadatik. Oh Allah, while Imam is in prison, I ask you to provide me faraghat. Tafrighani, that means give me free time so that I can do your ibadat the way you deserve. Because the way we perform the ibadat, the 17 rak'at, which are obligatory upon us in 20 minutes on daily basis, that's nearly not enough. But of course, we can't really do much because of the other things that we have to do. Imam says, oh Allah, I asked you, because Imam's time was also very occupied, to provide me time so that I can do your ibadat in free time, but I don't have any free time. Allahumma waqad fa'alta. But by putting me into the prison, you've provided me that faraghat. You've provided me that free time where I can go ahead and perform your ibadat. Falak alhamd. So therefore, hamd and praise be unto you. Imam ﷺ made this dua while he was in one of the prisons. His safar, his travel from one prison to another prison. You know, the prisons, don't think about the prisons that you have seen in the movies, for example. These were dark, very low ceiling prisons. No daylight, no sunlight. And it would be cold during the winter times, at night times, and it'd be hot during the daytime. And you weren't given any luxuries or amenities. So don't think about the prisons that you have the perspective of today. And Imam goes through one prison after another. First he was in Basra, in, you know, where some of the insiders who were spying on Imam. He said, the Hakim of the time said, make it difficult upon him. Not only that the prisons were difficult, make it even further difficult. He said, what do we do? We've seen nothing except munajat from this man. He's always doing sajda. And to stop him from eating, he doesn't eat anything. He's fasting. So what can you do? Then Imam was moved to Baghdad, the prison of Fadl ibn Rabi'. He also gave the same report that he's always majghul and busy in ibadat. Then Imam was sent to the Zindan of Fadl ibn Yahya. He was so impressed by Imam's character and Imam's ibadat and worship that he actually took Imam out of the prison and brought him in his house, in the open courtyard of his house, so that Imam can go ahead and do ibadat over there. Of course, that didn't last long. And lastly, Imam was sent to the prison of Sindi ibn Shahik, to whom Hakim had written that make sure that you make it difficult upon him. He's the one under whose watch Imam was given poison. Imam was poisoned and his shahada takes place. Harun tried to exhibit the death of Imam as natural by the help of false witnesses, that he might get himself cleared of that crime. Also stop his, partisans from revolt, because all that could happen. But all in all, it was in vain. Finally, by the efforts of one of the relations of Harun, person by the name Suleiman, a revolt took place in Baghdad, the funeral of Imam Musa Kadhim, which they desired to bury in confidentiality. They failed to do so. Imam ﷺ, yes, his janaza remained on the Jasr of Baghdad for 3 days. But eventually his janaza was picked up and his burial took place. And he was buried with hundreds and thousands of people attending the janazah. Well, Imam spent 14 years in prison, and he faced much difficulty. I would say, Imam, difficulties surrounded you until your death. But come look at Karbala. Look at the musibat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. La yawma ka yawmika ya Aba Abdillah. There's no day like the day of you, O Aba Abdillah. Imam Hassan has said that. That his son, Imam Zainul Abidin, is present. He sees the body of his father laying on the plains of Karbala, yet Imam Zainul Abidin cannot do much. He cannot come out of the tent to go ahead and properly bury the body of his father, nor can Imam Zainul Abidin prevent these ashqiya from trampling over the bodies of Sayyid al-Shuhada and the Shuhada, other Shuhada that were laying there. Imam could not stop them from severing the heads of Shuhada, especially the head of Imam Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada, while his son Imam Zainul Abidin is present over there. I would say, O Mawla Imam Musa Kadhim, while all the difficulties fell upon you, but at least the last rituals were taken out in the proper way. But come to Karbala, for 3 days, the body of Sayyid al-Shuhada laid on the plains of Karbala, and there was nobody to bury him. Ala lanatullah al-qawm al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Oh Allah, we've committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, give us the tawfiq and ability to follow the footsteps of Masumeen, alayhim salatu wasalam. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
مظلوم امام قدیما مظلوم امام قدیما یا باب الحوائج مظلوم امام قدیما یا باب الحوائج یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم
عرصے کے لیے آئے ہیں پھر آپ کے خادم
یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم
تہیر کا وارث ہے تو قرآن کی جاں ہے تو مالک و مختار ہے سلطان جنا ہے یہ کن کا سفر اذن سے تیرے ہی رواں ہے تقدیر نے کیا وقت یہ دکھلایا ہے مولا ظالم تجھے قیدی کی طرح لایا ہے مولا زیور تجھے زنجیر کا پہنایا ہے مولا
زیور تجھے زنجیر کا پہنایا ہے مولا محشر کی گھڑی ہے
قیامت کا سما ہے
یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم یا موسی کاظم
خاموش در و بام ہے مغموم فضا ہے ماتم ابو طالب کے گھرانے میں بپا ہے خنجر دل زہرا پہ پھر ایک بار چلا ہے
دل زہرا پہ پھر ایک بار چلا
رہتی تھی ہر وقت دعا میں، وقت کڑا آپ پہ زندان جفا میں، گزرے تھے کئی سال فقط ایک ہوا میں، نشان ہے
موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم، بس موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم،
اشک فشانہ لاکنا تو کہ گراں اللہ ہر مظلومی آل شہ ابرار، چلتے رہے سر اپنا جھکائے سوئے دربار،
چلتے رہے سر اپنا جھکائے سوئے دربار، سادات کی غربت دلی
غربت سے آیا ہے
موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم، بس موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم،
آئی ہے خزاں جعفر صادق کے چمن میں، ہے زہر حلاہل کا اثر سارے بدن میں، پھر زخم جگر تازہ ہوا روح حسن میں،
زخم جگر تازہ ہوا روح حسن میں، نماز پڑھا کرتی تھی
امت وہ کہاں ہے
موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم، بس موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم،
اختر ہو رقم کس طرح داد ستم کی، بغداد میں ڈھائے گئے اس رنج و علم کی، ارتاس پہ محفوظ ہے فریاد قلم کی،
ارتاس پہ محفوظ ہے فریاد قلم کی، بھی قسمت پہ
تیری نوحہ گناہ ہے
موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم، بس موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم، السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا نبی اللہ، السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیک یا سید الوصیین، السلام علیک یا فاطمة الزہراء سیدۃ النساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا حسن المجتبی، السلام علیک یا ابا عبد اللہ الحسین ایہا الشہید بکربلاء، السلام علی التسعة المعصومین من ذریتک علی بن الحسین زین العابدین ومحمد بن علی الباقر وجعفر بن محمد الصادق وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى الرضا ومحمد بن علي التقي الجواد وعلي بن محمد النقي الهادي والحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والأمر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك ورحمة الله وبركاته.